Offseason grades for all 30 teams. It's not complicated. Let's just get into it. Hello and welcome to Baseball Barbacast, the only baseball podcast in the world. Furious that Ronald Acuna was at the Bad Bunny halftime show. I'm Jake Mintz. That's Jordan Shusterman. And the guy didn't even lead the Braves in WAR. Like, Matt Olson robbed.
Matt Olson is getting ready to play another 162 games. And I have to imagine that Bad Bunny, who has clearly worked very hard to get where he is, respects that level of commitment. But I love seeing Ronald Acuna there, even if it took me a couple replays to be like, oh, yeah, no, that's definitely Ronald. What a performance from our fellow March 10th King. What an addition to the March 10th birthday club, along with John Hamm, who's another huge Bad Bunny fan. I have unfortunately not been blessed with a whole lot of awesome baseball players born on March 10th, but now I can claim Bad Bunny, who is every baseball player's favorite performing artist, or most of them anyway. How are you, Jake?
Bad Bunny,
the Super Bowl's over.
Yeah, halftime Super Bowl performer / baseball agent. That's not a thing that we talk about. Bad Bunny does own a agency that represents a pretty notable number of big leaguers. Where was, Francisco Alvarez, who I believe is represented by Bad Bunny. That's what Bad Bunny should have done. Just gotten like all of the Remus sports people.
I'm pretty sure Francisco Alvarez is already in Port St. Lucie because today, Jake Mintz, it is the first day of official pitchers and catchers reporting. Not every team is scheduled to officially report on February 10th, but I have already seen a lot of footage of some of the most notable pitchers and catchers making their way to their respective complexes in Arizona and Florida, as well as some non-pitchers and catchers. A lot of the Cubs, it feels like their whole roster is already down there.
That's
Alex
allowed?
Bregman taking BP. I know. Is Alex Bregman going to be catching? Is that what I'm supposed to take away from this footage? But I am very excited for this week, mostly because football is behind us, and I'm going to Arizona on Thursday. So I am neither a pitcher or a catcher, but reporters are also reporting this week. And I am so excited for this season to actually get started. I've been thinking about the WBC. I'm there. I'm all the way there. I know everyone says, "Oh, baseball season when football's over." No, it's never not baseball season for us. But it all does feel very real when the timing lines up this way. As for the purposes of this podcast, though, we figured that today was a good opportunity to close the book on the offseason once and for all. Are there still some free agents out there that need to find teams? Yes, there are. Could there still be some trades that will be made before opening day? Yes, absolutely. But once we arrive, once spring training starts, once pitchers and catchers are playing pitching and catch, we want to stop thinking about what has happened over the winter and start looking forward. And with that in mind, this is going to be our offseason grades episode. How are we going to do this, my friend?
For those of you who've been in school at any point, you're probably familiar with the ABCDF system. Grades are handed out based on letters. There are pluses attached to the end of them. We will hand those grades to each team for their off-season activities or lack thereof. Each of us has to dole out one A, at least one A, and one F, at least one F. We are not grading on a curve. I took into account the teams, where they're at in their contention cycle. Like, did the, Red Sox add more talent than the Nats? Yes. But did the Nats have a better offseason? Who can say? We will go division by division. We will do the Easts and then the Wests and then the Centrals. Any further questions before we begin?
No, I will just say that we've both prepared our grades ahead of time. We've not shared them with each other. But also, I historically, as you know, just have never really cared about grades. So this has not been something that has ruled my life in school at any point. I have never cared what grades I was getting, as you know. So maybe I took this a little bit less seriously. Maybe I was more lenient. Maybe we'll find out where this goes. But we are writing our offseason grades this week. I know I'm handling the Central. You're doing the East. Our pal Russ Dorsey handling the West. So I don't know. Maybe we won't exactly line up or agree, but we'll see where this goes. So let's get into it. We got to start handing out some grades. That is our opener and the whole podcast.
We begin, as all media outlets do all the time in the American League East. And at the top of that division last year, the Toronto Blue Jays. What did they do this winter? They signed Dylan Cease, Kazuma Akamoto, Tyler Rogers, and Cody Ponce. Shane Bieber opted into his deal, which kind of got overshadowed for 1 year, $16 million, right when the season ended. They attempted to get to Kyle Tucker. They made a real play for the top free agent on the board, missed out on him, and effectively let Bo Bichette walk without a hard push. All of this together, Jordan, what grade do you give the Toronto Blue Jays?
B+. B+ for Toronto. I think it is hard to fault any team that spends this aggressively in free agency for them to get Dylan Cease done this quickly, for them to finally land a Japanese star in Okamoto, to add a legitimately great reliever in Tyler Rogers, even though he looks funny when he's doing it. And Ponce gives them, of course, some additional rotation reinforcements as well. The Bieber thing is strange. How healthy he is certainly going to be something to watch leading up to the season, but they now do have more starters than they need, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I think the reason they don't get an A for me is we know how aggressively they were chasing Kyle Tucker. It's not just that they didn't get Kyle Tucker, but I'm still looking at this lineup and I'm wondering, okay, I'm excited about Okamoto and fairly optimistic, but there is a version where this lineup is just not as good as last year, which is maybe a high bar to hold for sure. But I'm a little bit, it just felt like for how aggressive they were being, for them to not close the door on Tucker and not still add one more bat feels a little bit, just a tick below. B+ for me.
For the same reasons, I gave them a B. I think this lineup got worse, right? You're basically swapping in Okamoto for Bichette. And yep. I think we'd all agree that Bichette is more likely to have a better season in 2026. Kyle Tucker felt like the ultimate goal of their winter in a way with how aggressively they were pursuing him. And so when you miss out on your ultimate goal and your lineup doesn't get better and you let Bo Bichette walk, a decision that I just think, again, has been sort of overlooked because of how much money they spent, it's hard for me to be super all in on your offseason. But like you said, when you're spending this much money and you're improving your pitching group this much, you can't fault them. But with just how it started, I was expecting them to stick the landing a little bit more. So B+ for you, B for me. The New York Yankees. The New York Yankees. What did they do this winter? They hit control copy, control paste, bringing back 6 free agents from the 2025 team. Cody Bellinger on a 5-year, $162 million deal. Trent Grisham on the QO. Ahmed Rosario, Paul Goldschmidt, Paul Blackburn, Paul Yarborough, all coming back on 1-year deals. They also traded for Ryan Weathers from the Miami Marlins.
This is, I know that Brian Cashman was very defensive when he spoke to the media recently, being like, we're not running it back. We've got Angel Chivie. This guy throws hard. Now we got Max Schumann. That was before they got Max Schumann. So they're really spicing things up here. I think really his argument, of course, being, leaning into Schlittler, talking about Garrett Cole coming back and a full year of Ben Rice. And I think there's some validity to that. But I also totally understand Yankees fans being frustrated. That said, they were a good baseball team last year. That is impossible to dispute. And with that in mind, I am going to still give them a B-. A B-. This was not a bad offseason because they kept a pretty good team together. And I do think that there is a lot of good coming. I think the Weathers addition is not nothing. And I think he could certainly make their team better, certainly in the first half of the season. So I am not excited about this offseason, but keeping a good team together, I don't think is a bad offseason necessarily. maybe this is too kind and it should be a C+, B- for me.
I disagree with Brian Cashman's approach to the framing of this winter, trying to argue that they're not running it back. I would just lean into it and say, yeah, we're running it back. We won 96 games. We're getting Garrett Cole off the IL. We think a full year Schlittler is going to be awesome. Like, we had the best offense in the world a year ago. Yeah, we're running it back. Would you not want to run back 96 wins? The postseason's a crapshoot and the Jays got hot. Like, that's what he should be saying, right? Not denying that they're running it back. That is weird to me. And as a teacher trying to hand out a grade, I'm giving the Yankees an NA, a not applicable. I'm not accepting this assignment. You turned this in last year. Okay, I've read this before. Don't hand me the same thing twice. I'm not fooled. In reality, I would give the Yankees C+, reasonable, defensible, underwhelming, unexhilarating. Each additional guy that they decided to bring back, I just was like, really? Like, okay, sure, yeah, that's fine. Not that the Yankees need to like make moves to sell tickets, but it's definitely not the easiest offseason to parlay into excitement.
But we know, I'll also say 94 games, not 96 games. So let's not give them too much credit for last year. But I will say, and I let's say though, like, I'm not just trying to be a turd about this. Doesn't 96 sound like so much more than 94? Like,
yeah, it does.
When you said it, I was like, man, if they had won 96 games, I'd be feeling way better. But anyway, the point is, I agree with you. I think it is not surprising that Brian Cashman is proud and stubborn enough to run this back to this degree. I guess that would be how I would phrase it. And for that,
Brian Cashman, you know what it's like?
Yeah.
It's like if you handed in an assignment and the teacher's like, this was good, but like, here are a couple edits on this. Like, take this first draft and make the edits, and then we'll talk. And then instead of handing in an edited version of the paper, you just hand the same thing back in. You're like, yeah, like Ryan Weathers is in here. It's fine. Like, it's totally different.
Yeah.
You're like, I wrote a good paper.
I didn't mention anything about adding Ryan Weathers, but okay, sounds good. All right,
sure.
Let's go to the Boston Red Sox, who won 89 games a year ago. They did make the postseason, but then they lost to these Yankees of New York. In the wild card round, they had one heck of a winter, and it has continued into this week, leading into pitchers and catchers, a fairly large move that we have not yet talked about on this podcast. But the headliner, of course, is they said adios to Alex Bregman. Whether that was the plan or not, it doesn't seem like that was the plan, but he went to the Cubs. So instead, they were like, how can we replace Alex Bregman? With Ranger Suarez, naturally. Of course, that is what you can do. So they gave Ranger Suarez a bunch of money to give Garrett Crochet a pretty nice little partner there at the top of the rotation. This is after making a couple of trades with the St. Louis Cardinals separately, not together. Don't even think about putting these trades together, to acquire Sonny Gray and Wilson Contreras, the veterans being offloaded by St. Louis. And then more recently, they have slowly filled in their infield in a very strange way. They gave IKF $6 million to be on the team and play a
Was that a donation?
That was an amount of money that they gave him. And then they traded for our pal, former podcast guest, Caleb Durbin, traded for the third time. Can we just keep Caleb on one team?
Character issues.
For all. Yeah, that's why he keeps getting traded. Just everybody hates that guy.
He's a problem in the room.
Caleb Durbin is now going to seemingly be their third baseman, maybe their second baseman, but third baseman certainly makes sense as they acquire him from Milwaukee. Also, Johan Oviedo, another pitcher who, on a lot of other teams, if you traded for Johan Oviedo, would be like, all right, I'm excited to see what this guy has in camp. I think in his case, people are going to be showing up to JetBlue Park and be like, oh, who's that gigantic guy? Oh, that's right. Johan Oviedo's on this team too. Is he going to be in the rotation? I don't know. They still have like 10 starters. So the Red Sox have been busy. Craig Breslow has kind of taken over Jerry Dipoto as like the wheeling, and he is making a lot of trades. I mean, Breslow was really just swapping left and right. Are they better than last year? I guess we can start there. but let's just go with it. What grade are you giving the Boston Red Sox after a very just lot to keep track of?
A lot going on here. A lot to parse through. I mean, very overwhelming offseason. I'm going to give them a B minus. Give them a B minus. They got, did they get better? They got more. Like they added, I don't know if they're better. The offense, the way that it's constructed with the players that they decided to bring in and the players they decided to not bring back, and Alex Bregman, puts a enormous amount of pressure, and pressure is privilege, an enormous amount of pressure on the shoulders of Roman Anthony to be the guy. Because when you look at this lineup, and we have talked about this a lot, does your lineup have a monster in it? Does it have a monster? The park has a monster in it. Roman Anthony could be the monster one day and has shown the ability and the potential to be that. This guy is still 21 years old. He turns 22 in mid-May. And by not getting like another big bopper to pair with him, I'm curious how that pans out. The Durbin deal is super fun. I think that's a good way to solve their problem. They still haven't ironed out their outfield overcrowding, and I think that they are probably just going to enter opening day with this mix and rotate the designated hitter through, whether that's Duran or Abreu. This is not an offensive offseason. It is confusing. It is not how I would have gone about supplementing this core, but I don't think it is awful. Yeah.
Closer to a B or a B plus for me. I think the Contreras move is underrated. I think that one is being a little bit overlooked.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be really important. Now, you can still say, well, he's never hit more than 21, 22 home runs in a season. Does he set a career high this year? Maybe. It's a balanced lineup, kind of, but it still feels like it lacks the punch for sure. I would also maybe argue that Bregman, even with Bregman, is it really that too? Is Bregman the kind of he's clearly very valuable, and so much about that was everything else he's bringing in, the defense and everything, as much as just strictly looking at him for what offense he's bringing. That said, I agree the offense still looks a little tick less, but they got better. I think they got better. It's a weird team. There's no way that this was what they envisioned when the offseason started, but I appreciate.
There's no way this is what they envisioned when they traded Rafael Devers, and that is part of it with this Caleb Durbin deal, sending Kyle Harrison to the Brewers as part of the Caleb Durbin package. That's effectively the conclusion of the Rafael Devers trade. There is a gentleman named Jose Bayo who remains in their farm system, who is 20 years old, who maybe is something one day. Maybe he becomes the greatest pitcher in the history of the sport. Who can say? But I think the way that the Red Sox have treated the pieces they got for Devers is a very powerful reminder that the Devers deal was a salary dump and little more. It was not about acquiring talent back in that move. It was about freeing up payroll space to make other moves. And so when you, as infuriating as that trade was, and as much as we still dislike that deal, when you do the plus minus analysis from that deal, I do think you need to include some of Sonny Gray's contract and some of the Ranger Suarez money and some of the Wilson Contreras contract. And should the Red Sox just be spending $270 million on their roster instead of $195? Should they have done all this stuff and kept Rafael Devers? Probably. But I do think that is a relevant component of analyzing that deal in retrospect.
Fair enough. I still like it more than you do. Let's go to the Tampa Bay Rays. Speaking of busy, oh my goodness, there's a lot going on. This is the opposite of the Red Sox, where every move felt like grabbed a lot of headlines. The Rays made so many moves. How many of them made even a dent in our timelines? How many of them was anybody talking about for any amount of time? They wiggled their way into the Brendan Donovan trade recently. They did get a huge prospect haul for Shane Baz, which, I mean, I like a lot of what they got back from Baltimore there. They made, again, three-way trades, right? So they have the one that they wiggle their way into with Brendan Donovan. They have the one with Pittsburgh, which was very, honestly, that was the one that I'm still kind of struggling with, where they get rid of Mason Montgomery and Brandon Lau, which, again, they finally trade Brandon Lau and Jake Mangum. And what did they even get back for that? I'm not even. Oh, right. They got Jacob Melton. This was the Jacob Melton and Anderson Brito. Right?
Here's the deal.
And then they get Gavin Lux also. So they made a ton of moves. The roster looks very different. They signed a couple veteran free agents. Did they get better? No, they did not. Their major league team is not better than it was a year ago, and the major league team last year was not very good.
This is the thing about the Rays, and why I'm a little like confused about the Rays is what their trades are saying one thing, which is we do not expect to compete in 2026, right? When you're trading away Brandon Lau and Josh Lowe and Mason Montgomery, you're saying, and Shane Baz, you're saying we're taking a half step back this year. And I think that that's reasonable because I don't know if they have the core to win a World Series right now in a division that's pretty stacked, right? But then the signings, Steven Matz for 2 years, Cedric Mullins, Nick Martinez, Jake Fraley, all feel like the type of signings a Rays team that was expecting to compete would make. Now, maybe they're making these signings to make a couple of adjustments and deal these guys at the deadline. Totally possible. But I don't want to be like, what are the Rays doing? Spending money. Like, I guess that's a good thing. Altogether, I think this is the B'est B. This is the most B. You could B minus it because it's too confusing. Doing three-way trades feels like a bit to me more than like actual strategy. I mean, it's preposterous, right? Like,
yeah, C+ because I don't love all the players that they got back in the trades. So, I mean, the Rays, they're fine. Whatever. All right, let's go to the hey, spoiler alert, Baltimore Orioles. They're getting an A from me. That's why I'm wearing my Delmarva Shorebirds hat.
Oh!
The Baltimore Orioles, wow, what a winter. Pete Alonso, Taylor Ward, Ryan Helsley, Shane Baz, Zach Eflin's back. See, when you bring back Zach Eflin and you do all these other things, everyone's like, awesome, cool. Welcome back, Zach Eflin. That's great.
Happy to see you.
Blaze Alexander's here now, too, for some reason. I don't know where he fits, but he's a fun name and a fun player. And now John Kenzie Noel is going to be hitting a bunch of home runs in AAA as well. This, in tandem with hiring a new manager, Craig Albernaz, it's an A for me. Could it be an A- because they did not land that frontline pitcher? I think yes, and I'm still a little bit concerned. But this is still, I think, the team that got the most better of any team. I think. I guess there's ways to calculate that pretty easily. They certainly are in the running there, and because of that, I will give the Orioles a straight A and feel good about it.
In the same way that a Little League coach parent is tougher on their child, I will give the Orioles an A- because they did not upgrade the pitching enough to get an A. Yeah, it's that simple.
Sure.
And had they not failed to do this last year, like last year we entered spring training and we were like, the Orioles didn't do enough. And then, wow, they really didn't do enough. And so it's not like I trust them to like drabble it. Like I don't trust them to like figure that out based upon their track record at the bottom of the rotation with Kremer and Eflin. And so because of that, I'm like, yeah. But like, I don't want to overshadow the Pete Alonso thing. It's a massive deal. I mean, it's a franchise-altering move.
Yeah, and for me, it's like, especially I'm always trying to do this with grading off seasons. It's like most teams don't accomplish every need. And to me, it's like, how much better did you get? And like I said, that is where they rank at the top or near the top, as opposed to just, did it make them the best team in baseball? No. This is still a flawed team. And when we preview the season, am I going to pick the Orioles to win the division? I don't know yet. But as far as what they accomplished this winter, I still think that they are near the top of the league. Let's go to the National League East, where the Philadelphia Phillies are not running it back to the degree that the Yankees are running it back, but they are certainly keeping some pieces in place. Schwarber and Real Muto are back as expected. Ranger Suarez is gone. He's been there for a long time, so that'll be different. They tried really hard to get Bo Bichette, and they failed. However, they did get Adolis Garcia, bounce-back candidate, and Brad Keller, one of my favorite signings of the winter. I think Brad Keller is very good. This was another strange winter for the Phillies. Dave Dombrowski talking a big game, saying, we really wanted Bo Bichette. Oh, we tried so hard. But you failed. You didn't get him. And so now, after all this, I'm going to give the Phillies a B-. A B-. Maybe that is still a little too generous. I am worried about the outfield for sure. But that's probably going to be true anyway, unless they sign Kyle Tucker. Glad they kept Schwarber. Overpaying for Real Muto. Don't love that, but for the short term, that's fine. Love the Brad Keller signing. Kind of like Jonathan Bolin, not going to lie. Kind of like Jonathan Bolin. Yeah, I'll say it. But they kept it together, and I like Keller, and, it's fine. B-.
See, for me, they wanted Bichette, and they did not get Bichette. That sucks. They lost that series of moves because they immediately just then went and overpaid for Real Muto, and it was just clear that they were saving that money for Bichette, and that the optics of that were super weird. I think they overpaid for Adolis at the beginning of the offseason and opted for that instead of Harrison Bader, which was kind of a weird look. I think that they could have used another depth starter in the rotation to not put as much pressure on Andrew Painter or Taijuan Walker or Zach Wheeler to get back from his injury. And so all that together, there's been running it back debate with the Phillies. Are they running it back? I think they're running it back less than they have been accused of. I do think handing Justin Crawford the torch as the everyday center fielder is significant and a significant change. I just don't love the offseason. Keeping Schwarber is a big deal, though. Like that, he was too important to the operation to let him leave. All right, let's pick up the pace a little bit as we move to the New York Mets, who had the most interesting offseason of any team. And let's try and simplify this as much as possible. They said goodbye to 4 key players from the past era of Mets baseball, with Eddie D, Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, and Brandon Nimmo. They acquired Freddie Peralta to lead the rotation from the Brewers. They signed Bo Bichette to play third base on a big annual average value deal, traded for Luis Robert as the everyday center fielder, rebuilt the bullpen with Devin Williams and Luke Weaver, and added Jorge Polanco as a free agent to play first base. Jordan, what do you give the Mets?
B+. I think they rallied late. They put themselves in one heck of a hole, and they slowly worked their way out.
During the regular season, they rallied late.
Yeah. I guess last year was just more the opposite. They were like, hey, we're pretty good. Oh, nope, we're really bad. This time they were like, you know what? Let's start off. We're already feeling terrible after the end of the season, so we might as well just go even lower and get rid of everyone's favorite players. But they have added some real talent to this ball club. How it fits together, we are going to see. That is why we can't give it an A. For the amount of talent that they brought in, it is still not hard to look at this group and being like, this might not actually really work. But the upside here is pretty clear. And for that reason, I still give them a pretty strong grade. The Robert move was so important. Both Robert and Peralta were so obvious from the start of the offseason. And for them to get those done for the prices that they paid, I think was a great bit of business. And maybe MJ Melendez will figure out how to reach base more often than he has been so far as a major leaguer, because he's on the Mets now too.
It's an A- for me, and it would be an A if they kept Edwin Diaz. I think it takes courage, bravery in the sporting context, obviously, to make such a dramatic shift here and change course so completely by saying goodbye to 4 players that this fan base really loved, but that were flawed sufficiently to the point that it was hurting the Mets. Like, Pete was so bad at first base, and that despite his offensive prowess, like, he didn't fit with what the Mets were trying to do in terms of upgrading run prevention. And like, I think you can criticize each of the individual moves It's a lot of pressure on Polanco and Bichette to learn new positions. Robert has a lot of offensive question marks. Did this lineup actually get better? There are so many pitchers. How many of them are actually good? Like, I get all of that. But I think what they've done here is they haven't even assembled a new core. They've gotten a very expensive Band-Aid. This is a holding pattern. This is a temporary approach that could yield results in the short term that doesn't hamstring them in the long term, gives them the ability to give some of the prospects they really do like Carson Bench, some runway to prove themselves at the big league level. They didn't give up any no doubt top prospects to make these moves. And I just think that, like, I think other executives would have just rested on their laurels and not completely changed things up like this. And so I give David Stearns a lot of credit for it, and I give them an A minus.
That is valid. I cannot wait to see how this works for them. Last thing I'll say about them is same thing that we were sort of talking about with Boston and their outfield group. I am still looking at this group of infielders and pitchers and just being like, how is this going to work? Especially now you bring in Melendez, Beatty. Okay, so I guess he's not playing left field. Maybe he is playing left field. You still have Mauricio and Vientos and whatever. They needed to change something, and so they changed everything, or almost. Let's go to the Marlins of Miami, who their two biggest moves were trading two pitchers. Traded Edward Cabrera to the Cubs, traded Ryan Weathers to the Yankees. They gave Pete Fairbanks a bunch of money to save games. How many save opportunities will he have? That is going to depend on the Marlins scoring runs and then having a lead late in the game. That's how that works. And that's kind of just like, how good are the Marlins supposed to be this year? I'm giving the Marlins a C+, because while I think they did okay in these trades, I would like to see a little bit more urgency in really any direction. And I think what they showed, like the Morel signing, like, what? Come on. Like, I would have liked Chris Paddock now recently. It's like, give your young group a little bit more veteran love is maybe the way I would say it than what they did. Their payroll is still at an embarrassingly low level, and that alone keeps them in a C. I like where the direction of this team, but this was not an offseason that I'm particularly thrilled about.
The direction of the organization, I'm excited about. This offseason specifically is a D- for me. If you enter opening day with a $72 million payroll, you are a twerp. And you gave free agent deals to Pete Fairbanks and Chris Paddock and Christopher Morel. Cool, great, happy for you. I think Fairbanks is good, awesome. You want to let your young players play, I get it. But I think talent flowed out of this organization and not into it. Yes, maybe the 2025 Marlins overperformed, but I do think that you're right. Just some adults in the room, especially with the offensive group. Like, you can squint with the right offseason additions and be like, the Marlins could be a wild card team. I don't feel that way right now. And I think that their lack of willingness to spend money on the big league roster is really unfortunate. Let's move on to the Atlanta Braves, who I forgot finished behind the Marlins last year.
Yeah.
Wow, that was a tough season for Atlanta. What did they do this winter? They spent big on the bullpen, bringing back Raisel Iglesias for a 1-year deal and signing Robert Suarez on a 3-year deal. They made a trade early on, sending Nick Allen to the Astros for Mauricio Dubon as a utility man. They signed Mike Yastrzemski on a 2-year deal to be the fourth outfielder. They let Marcell Ozuna, more on him later, walk in free agency, which means they have some more flexibility in the DH department. And then they solved their shortstop situation by giving Ha-Sung Kim $20 million. And then he fell on a patch of ice and hurt his finger and will be out for months. I am going to give the Atlanta Braves a straight B. Had Ha-Sung Kim not slipped on the ice, I would have given them maybe an A-. And it is not Atlanta's fault that their new shortstop slipped on some ice in Korea. But it is their burden to carry, and therefore I give them a B.
B for me as well. Yastrzemski's going to be their left fielder. I don't think that's a fourth outfield situation. I think Profar is
Well,
probably more likely to DH at this point now that
well, so yeah, that's what I meant.
is gone. But I mean, they gave him a lot of money, and I know he's 35, but he's coming off quietly one of the best
He
seasons
hits.
of his career. So I do really like that move, finally changing up the offensive group a bit. So many injury question marks on the in the rotation, and so that worries me. The fact that they have not signed a starter is kind of shocking. I will say though, and I was going to mention this with Philly, if there is something left still to do this offseason, like there are starters out there. There are still pitchers available as I talk, on the morning of February 10th. So the Braves can still do something to turn this B into a B plus or a B minus, but we will see, or an A minus, but we will see if they can do it. One more team before we take a break. It's the Nationals of Washington. The rebuild is on, folks. And I understand people say, what do you mean? Well, what have they been doing for the last 3-4 years? Well, yes, they traded Juan Soto. They tried to rebuild. And so much was going wrong besides like the few core players that they got back for Juan Soto that they turned into one of the worst teams in baseball, and their infrastructure was troublingly far behind. And so they have cleaned house, Paul Taboni in, Blake Butera in, and this is going to be a year of new processes and new baseball players. I think that trading Mackenzie Gore right now is fine. I mostly liked what they got back. Harry Ford, maybe the catcher of the future. I think that is a good move. Foster Griffin, really their only free agent signing is, he's obviously, you're hoping he's good when he comes back from Japan and they trade him. I don't know. These ones, we're going to talk about St. Louis here a little bit later. As you mentioned, you got to grade them on the intentions of the organization. Obviously, they got worse. We know that. With that in mind, it's still probably a B minus for me just because it's still a little more tepid than I think it could have been. I'm not saying I want them to trade CJ Abrams and trade everybody, but I would have liked to see a little bit more spending, maybe one or two more trades.
A minus for me.
Okay.
They just nailed this hire. And Paul Taboni's...
Let's hope.
Well, I'm telling you, this is my opinion. I think they nailed this hire because what Paul Taboni has done is put his imprint on this organization top to bottom with the hires that he's made. He is not half-assing this rebuild. Like, they are hiring very progressive, modern coaches with awesome reputations. If you look at the developmental hires that they've made at the minor league level, like, these are big deals. What should they have done more at the major league level? Like another offensive veteran to kind of help this group. I think they maybe could still do that. But I think that the direction of this organization is now something that excites me. That was not the case when I woke up the last day of the season. And so for that reason, I give this an A minus. What they got back specifically is almost less important than what they are now doing, if that makes sense.
That I totally agree. With. Yeah, if we're just going like, and yeah, some of these teams, they did change a lot. They hired a new manager. They hired a bunch of new coaches, and the Nats are as dramatic of an example of that as we have. We're going to take a break. When we return, we head out west.
And welcome back to Baseball Barbacast from the East Coast to the West Coast. Here we go. Seattle Mariners, American League West. They finished one game away from the World Series. They did win the Super Bowl, though. That was pretty cool. What did they do this winter? They signed Josh Naylor, bringing him back on a 5-year deal. They traded for Brendan Donovan. Those two were the kind of the big moves as the bookenders for their winter. In between those, they traded for Jose Ferrer, hard-throwing lefty in the bullpen, signed Rob Refsnyder, who's a lefty killer, and Andrew Knizner to be Cal Raleigh's backup. They let Gino Suarez and Jorge Polanco walk in free agency. Jordan Shusterman, Mariners grade, please.
B plus for me. The Donovan move, which we were all waiting for, was crucial. However, I think you're still kind of in the same place of like how much better particularly did the lineup get when you swap in Refsnyder, Donovan for Polanco, Suarez, especially with Refsnyder maybe more of a part-time role. That said, love the Ferrer move for sure, and Donovan is just a perfect fit. So it's a good offseason. I still think they could have gone one step further if they spent a little more, added one more bat, added one more reliever. I would have liked to see that. Maybe there's still time for that. But good offseason, rock solid. I think they got to feel pretty good about it.
A- for me. I don't know what exactly they could have done to add. Maybe you get a DH type, but like Dom Canzone is pretty good. And if you're going to platoon him effectively with Ref Snyder, that's a good player. You know, Rob Canzone, Dom Ref Snyder, like that's going to be actually valuable and effective. But yeah, the bullpen is the thing that leaves me wanting a little bit more. Just a veteran arm there would have been exciting. Let's move on to the Houston Astros, who have still maybe not finished their offseason as the Isaac Paredes trade rumors swirl all about. They did sign Tatsuya Imai for 3 years, $54 million, which I love. One of my favorite moves of the winter. But that was really all they did. Besides a three-way deal that netted them Mike Burrows in addition to the rotation. This offensive group looks basically the same. And they showed zero interest in bringing back Framber Valdez at all. Jordan, what do you think about the Astros?
I think I'm a little bit lower on Imai than you, even at that price. This is a C+ for me because this position player group still just doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make sense, and it's not good enough. That's where I'm having issue with where they're at, and I still feel like they're gonna have to sort it out somehow, whether that's trading Paredes or finding someone to take Christian Walker, finding another way to get another proven outfielder would be really good. The pitching could be really good. They've added a lot of depth and upside with Burrows and Imai. I don't know. I wasn't worried about their run prevention. Like not that it's bad to add more, but to me, they had to find a way to improve this position player group, both from a dependability and upside, and I just don't see it. So C+ for me, and Imai is going to be a huge part of this, and that we don't know. He's got a lot to prove as well.
Incomplete grade for me. You did not finish your homework. Houston Astros, Dana Brown, Jim Crane, you get extended time. All right, go ahead, take a couple more weeks, trade Isaac Paredes. Let's see what you get back, and then we'll talk. I just don't know how to grade this. If they enter opening day with this position player group, like let's say they freeze it right now, it's a D for me. But I don't think that they are done. The Texas Rangers, they look pretty done. They traded for Brandon Nimmo and Mackenzie Gore, and then signed a bunch of complementary pieces. Danny Jansen, Chris Martin in the bullpen, Alexis Diaz in the bullpen, Jacob Junis in the bullpen. Hired Skip Schumacher to be their manager, which I believe is worth like 30 wins. You know how much I adore Skip. As a whole, I'm going to give the Texas Rangers a C+.
This was one of the hardest ones for me to grade, I think, of any team. I mean, these are some really significant changes. Danny Jansen is the catcher. He's their catcher now. They non-tender Jonah Heim. They are moving on from Jonah Heim. Like, they are trusting Danny Jansen to be their catcher. Whole new bullpen. And Mackenzie Gore, can you really actually unlock him? I do like the Nimmo side, at least in the short term, in terms of improving the offense. And I love Skip too. So I'm giving them a B. Because I don't really know what to give them, to be honest. This is a very strange offseason. I think, did they get better? Maybe slightly, but they have a lot to prove. Yeah. They've just been so underwhelming and disappointing the last couple seasons that I don't totally trust it, but Skip certainly makes me feel a little bit better about the whole operation.
The Rangers are just so hard to grade because whether or not they have a successful season is not dependent on the offseason moves they made. It is dependent on whether Corey Seager plays 140 games or 96 games. It depends on whether Jock Peterson wakes up and hits. It's about Jake Berger being a real player. Is Evan Carter going to stay on the field? How good is Wyatt Langford? Is he a 2.5 win player? Is he a 5.5 win player? Josh Young, can Josh Smith do that? Like, that's going to dictate the season, not like, is Brandon, like we know what Brandon Nimmo's going to be. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I agree. I found them very difficult to grade, but bringing in Skip, I think, is a big deal and will help them at the margins. The Athletics of Yolo County You only live once. The Athletics, they are operating like they're going to live forever as they extended Tyler Soderstrom and Jacob Wilson, both on 7-year deals. Those were the biggest moves of their winter. They traded for Jeff McNeil and signed Mark Leiter Jr. to a 1-year contract. They did absolutely nothing to upgrade their pitching rotation. What do you give the A's?
C-. I know it's hard to get people to go to sign in Sacramento. I totally get that. But also, like, that's you did that. You made that choice. You're there. So, and there's a price for all these guys. In the way that I said about the Marlins, like, come on, like, you showed some stuff. Maybe let's take a real step forward this year. They have one of the best lineups in baseball. Extending Wilson and Soderstrom is great. Doesn't make you better in 26. So that's nice to see some investment. But if they had gotten even a couple, 3 or 4 starters, it would be way easier to talk ourselves into them as a wild card team. The way that some teams still might, there's some people still might, but this is still not a pitching staff to trust, and it's really sad that they did nothing. I mean, sorry, Mark Leiter and Scott Barlow, that's not going to fix things. So really disappointing. I know it's hard to talk about this entire franchise and just where they're at and who their fans are and what any of this means, but if we're just judging them on how much better they got at a very important time with a lot of good players, they didn't get better, and that sucks.
C- for me as well, because the bar was pretty low here to upgrade the rotation. Like, if they had went out and signed like Nick Martinez, or maybe they go pay Lucas Giolito, but like, there were moves here that they could have made that wouldn't have broken the bank, that I think would have made them better. Anthony Kay coming, like, if they had gotten one of those guys coming over from Asia, even like Michael Lorenzen, like, to be an adult in the room, I think would have been beneficial. And instead they didn't do anything at all to help their pitching. Like, similar to the Marlins, there was a world where they do certain things this winter that gets you excited and you're like, oh, that could be a wild card team. And I think it's harder to do than it otherwise could have been. Let's finish up this division with the Angels, who hired Kurt Suzuki to be their manager on a 1-year deal. A 1-year deal for a manager remains downright baffling. 2 interesting trade additions with Grayson Rodriguez and Josh Lowe. And then they signed 4 veteran relievers to 1-year deals: Kirby Yates, Drew Pomeranz, Hunter Strickland, Jordan Romano. And they brought back Yohan Moncada to play third base.
D+. Who did they sign or acquire where it's like, I know what I'm getting from that guy? You didn't even mention Alek Manoah is on the Angels now. They traded for Vaughn Grissom. They signed Nick Madrigal. Like, they're really playing the hits of post type whatever. There's injury risk. There's all kinds of stuff. And it's just like, what do you want? What is the plan? What are you doing? You do actually have some amount of decent major leaguers on this team now. It is not a team bereft of talent, but there is still no cohesion, no clear structure, no obvious, like, this is our core, this is who we're building around, this is what shows that this is why we are going to be able to compete this year. And this is literally the last team in the sport that I would trust to have accomplished anything. So sometimes the Angels have off seasons where people are looking to be like, oh, hold on a second. This was not one of them. D+ for me. The plus being that, yes, there is upside with Grayson and with Josh Lowe and these other guys. But the odds of all of them, let alone any of them hitting it, are low, especially in this environment.
F+ for me. F+. The ever rare F+. I'll start with the plus. Let's start with the plus. I think that Grayson Rodriguez is the type of move that they should be making, going for pitching upside. There's a lot of control there. Team control. Cool. Great. That's a plus for me. Trading away Taylor Ward, who was a year from free agency, like, that is a move that the Angels have not made throughout the years, and so I'm giving them a plus for that. They get an F for literally everything else. I think that this organization is dead last in terms of, like, ideological cohesion, in terms of a mission, in terms of a coherent strategy and a plan. Hiring a manager to be your manager for 1 year underscores that lack of direction, where you're just like, well, just try this right now and maybe it'll work and maybe it won't. It is baffling. I think the Kurt Suzuki hire could be a catastrophe. I think, again, like, no shade to Kurt Suzuki, that any 1 year hire is the epitome of saying you are a placeholder. We do not trust you more than that. It is so bizarre. I don't understand it. This team is not getting better. They're not getting worse. They're just waking up every day and trudging through life just to check a box. I don't understand the point of this organization right now. They are aimless. They are infuriating.
Ugh. I mean, they were bad at literally everything last year except for hitting home runs, which I know sounds silly, but was the case. It was a bad offense. It was a bad pitching staff. It was a bad defense. Fourth in homers. Woo! Home runs. Home runs are fun. All right, let's go to the National League West. Let's stay in Los Angeles, or actually go to Los Angeles from Anaheim. As some people would clarify. Dodgers, what are they up to? Interestingly, the Dodgers, I think, probably had one of the smallest number of transactions of any team in baseball. However, when you give Kyle Tucker $240 million over 4 years,
speaking of small numbers,
and you give
240
Diaz. Give Edwin Diaz a bunch of money. Bring back Miguel Rojas. Clayton Kershaw's gone. You try to sign Andy Ibanez and sneak him through waivers, and the A's were like, not so fast. That was super weird, but we'll move past that. Let's keep it simple. I mean, it's an A. Like, what do you want me to say? Like, they got the best free agent. They addressed their biggest need with the best option. And I still, again, when we get to the preview of the season, do I still have some questions about the Dodgers? Yeah, I do. But in terms of what they needed to do this offseason and what they did, yeah, they did it. It's an A. Like, sorry.
There are only two options here, an A or an F. It's either an A because they signed the best player available and the best player available at their biggest hole in Edwin Diaz, or it's an F because they're ruining the sport. Okay? Because they're sending us into a labor stoppage of woe. Those are the two options. I don't think you can give them any other grade. Do I give them an A? Do I give them an F? I'll give them an F.
Okay. Love that. Let's go to San Diego. Another team that made a shockingly small number of transactions. Are they about to be sold? Is that good? Is that bad? We're going to find out. But as for the baseball team, they brought back Michael King. I was shocked by that, but they got it done. They signed Sungmoon Song from Korea, one of the best players in the KBO. How good is he? What position is he going to play? We'll see. And then they got Miguel Andujar. Love that. I just talked about it last week. Love Miguel Andujar.
Good bit of business.
Honestly, Miguel Andujar, just alone at the end, maybe raises this from a C+ to a B-. But again, this is still a team where did you get better? And it's hard to say yes. It's really, really difficult to say yes. And for that, I think it stays in the C+ range. We know that there's a lot of bigger picture things going on with the Padres that I'm sure has limited AJ Preller's ability to maneuver. But regardless, we still thought he was going to make some crazy trade, and he didn't. And from both an entertainment standpoint and probably from a is your team better standpoint, the answer is just didn't happen. So, sorry. C+.
I'm going to give him a C+. Throughout his career, AJ Preller has been this like transactional Houdini where it's like, well, he's backed into this corner. How's he going to get out of it? And then he, trades 7 prospects for a big leaguer. And you just expect him to do that. And so when he doesn't do that, 1, you're disappointed. And 2, I think it underscores just how hamstrung he was or is by the realities of this franchise. And so it's difficult to fault AJ Preller this winter. Like, I think you can fault the Xander Bogaerts deal for what it prohibited him from doing right now, maybe. But in terms of this winter, it's just like CC+, bringing back King was an interesting way to spend that money. Everything that happened with Yu Darvish is unfortunate, but it like hurts the team. And Duhar is a nice bit of business. Craig Stammen is the manager. Seems like a good thing. We don't really know. As an entertainment, this is all entertainment. They never entertained me. The Padres, I'm used to them entertaining me transactionally, and they failed to do that this winter. Let's move to a team that always fails to entertain me. That's not nice. The Arizona Diamondbacks. What did they do this winter? They traded for Nolan Arenado to play third base, but the Cardinals are paying most of that down. Besides that, not a whole lot. They signed Merrill Kelly, 2 years, $40 million, bringing him back after trading him at the deadline last year. Carlos Santana to hang out. They didn't trade Ketel Marte after a whirlpool of rumors. And then Zach Gallen is still out there. A reunion feels likely-ish, but for a player who was so important to their pitching staff for a long time, I know he was bad in 2025. Interesting to see if they bring him back. Diamondbacks, weird one. I'm going to give them a C.
C+ for me. I actually love the Arenado move. I think that he is going to be pretty good. I think, or even average, which is a totally good thing to add to this team, both on and off the field. Santana, how much does he help with first? Who knows? This team needed so much pitching coming into the offseason, and they simply have not accomplished that. Bringing back Merrill Kelly, fine, he's solid. Soroka, maybe some upside there. You just trade for Cade Stroud. But this is just not a pitching staff to believe in right now. And even if they bring back Gallen, they just had him, and I guess, yeah. So Gallen, I guess, would help from just raise the floor, but they are still a long way away from me being super excited about picking them to be a postseason team. So C+, though. I like the Arenado move. Let's go to the Giants, another team that needed pitching and didn't really get it. They signed Adrian Hauser. They signed Tyler Mahle. They get Harrison Bader and Luis Arraez to add to the lineup. Those moves I think we like more than most. And most importantly, they signed. Well, they did sign Tony Vitello. That was a big signing because they gave him a lot of money to get out of Knoxville. So as I've mentioned, we talked about it recently. This is probably one of the 2 or 3 teams I'm most interested in this season. But if we judge the totality of their offseason, I like it more than most. I'm going to go B- for them. The pitching is still a huge concern, question mark, but I think B-, and I'm so excited for Tony V.
Yeah. I'll just do what you said. I'll go B-. All
right.
I love the Harrison Bader deal. Well, I like the Harrison Bader deal. I think that he fits really well in that ballpark. They needed someone who could go play center field. He makes a lot of contact. I think that's going to be good. The rotation is just, it's not good enough. It's just not good enough. And if you include Devers in the offseason moves, it looks a lot better, which is why I don't hate this. Like, that is the big addition here. And they, unlike the Padres, they entertained me. Like, adding Tony Vitello gave us so much fodder that I don't want to knock them too hard.
Yeah, that's again, is that how we should be grading these? Who's to say? Speaking of being entertained, folks, the Colorado Rockies are going in a new direction. All right, spoiler. A for Jake.
A+.
I am going to go with a B because it's different. They made some weird trades and some weird signings. They are starting to do things. I was kind of hoping they would do more things, and so that is why I'm only giving it a B. But I understand they want to take stock in what they have and understand the direction they need to go before really dramatically changing things up. That said, they have shuffled some things around. We know the leadership is new, except for Warren Schaefer, I guess, is still there, but that's fine. DePodesta, Burns, we feel better about one of those than the other, but they are at least seemingly trying something different. They will be terrible this year again, but I am looking forward to watching it.
Jordan, if you lost the ability to speak for some reason, you were in a coma for a long time and you weren't speaking, and then suddenly you spoke, I wouldn't care what exactly you said. I would just be thrilled that you spoke. And that is how I feel about the Rockies. Next winter, we can grade them on a different scale. But right now, they're driving down a new road. They're living a new life. They're speaking a new song. And that's all I care about. A++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++++
All right. Congrats, Rockies. Off-season winners. We're going to take a break. When we return,
winners.
It's time for the Centrals.
And welcome back to Baseball Barbacast. Let's go to Middle America, where Jordan Shusterman lives. The American League Central. The Cleveland Guardians stormed down the Detroit Tigers towards the end of last season, got bounced in the playoffs, and then proceeded to do very, very little this winter. They brought back Austin Hedges before free agency even started. No one else had an opportunity to sign Austin Hedges because the Guardians made it so. They extended Jose Ramirez, and they added a couple bullpen pieces with Sean Armstrong, Connor Brogdon, and Colin Holderman. Jordan, are the people of Northeast Ohio parading in the streets over this offseason?
No. D+ for me. This was disappointing. D for disappointing. Extending Jose Ramirez is awesome. Doesn't make you better in 2026. And that should be the goal for a team that is finally trying to break through and not just be a surprise ALCS. Oh, wow. Well, we didn't think the Guardians were this good. Well, okay, let's go farther than that, right? We're going to have a similar conversation here in a second about the Brewers. But the Guardians, roster-wise, are a good bit behind Milwaukee. And because of that, letting the kids play is fine. I'm looking forward to it in to some respect, but this team deserved more investment because they have proven to actually be good, unlike teams like the A's and the Pirates and the Marlins. This team is good, and Stephen Vogt and his crew deserves a little bit more financial investment and aggressiveness, whether that is in free agency or via trade, And so because of that, maybe this is a little harsh, but I'll be harsh. These are people that I see all the time, and that's fine. And I think, by the way, Colin Holderman's going to be really good. I think Sean Armstrong's going to be really good. I think the bullpen's going to be good. Emmanuel Clase is going to not be around. And I think the pitching staff will still be great. But so many questions about this offense and just leaving up to so many kids and so many injury-laden players. So D+, maybe it's just,
You be harsh. I'd be harsher. F. F, 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 F. Fa, 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 fa. Here's my reasoning. I've said this before. I will say it again. When you have Jose Ramirez, a generational player, a future Hall of Famer willing to stay in town for, frankly, below market value, you owe it to him, to the fan base, to your entire franchise to do everything you can to win while he's there, to make the best of the unicorn window. Once again, the Guardians have failed to do that. Now, look, I understand the rationale between leaving enough places open for guys to prove themselves. However, you got to make some choices already. You see it? Do we think whoever's playing shortstop this year, whether it's Rocchio or Gabriel Arias, do we think that player is going to be outstanding, Jordan? Probably not, right? And it's not even they didn't even supplement the group, right? If they had gone out and signed Harrison Bader, right? A guy who made a ton of sense for this roster. They had nobody who could play center field. They needed a right-handed bat. I would have not fudded them. I would have not handed them the fuh. But instead, I'm going to give them a big fat fuh. Now, look, these people who run this team are smarter than me. They know more about baseball. I understand that. To me, it's not the moves, it's the ideological umbrella that they're sitting under, right? And I know that the leadership group is hamstrung by ownership and they're unwilling to suspend. But just some urgency. Jose is not getting younger like the rest of us, okay? He's getting older. It's good that he's around, but for what? He's around for what, right? That's the thing.
Yep.
If he ends his career without playing in another World Series, I'll be so mad. I'll be infuriated.
Yeah. It is a sad, sad situation. Let's go to the Detroit Tigers. This is a weird one. This is a weird one. They were trending towards a very, very poor grade. They bring back Gleyber Torres. Did they want to bring back Gleyber Torres? Well, Gleyber Torres wanted to be back, so he accepted the qualifying offer for $22 million. Then they patched up the bullpen. Oh, Kenley Jansen, he's famous. Kyle Finnegan, we liked him. Drew Anderson, come on back from Asia. Good for you. And then you, in the span of 12 hours, you add $70 million to your payroll in the form of Tarek Skubal winning arbitration and Framber Valdez, his new friend in the rotation. One of the weirdest. I have to imagine, if you're a Tigers fan, this has been one of the stranger winters that you have ever experienced. At the very least, it sure seems like Tarek Skubal is going to be on the team this year, so that's kind of nice, I hope. But other than that, Framber is a huge deal for sure. How much does Framber do to put this in a positive grade? Because I'm honestly still kind of leaning towards C+, but maybe that's harsh because I love Framber and Framber's really good. What do you think?
I have C+.
Yeah.
I was very open and honest about how I feel like this team doesn't have the offense to win a World Series, doesn't have a needle mover in the lineup. We got a really good email from a Tigers fan being like, sorry for being defensive. The Tigers do have a top 5 MVP finalist. His name is Tarek Skubal. And made the point, it was like, was there anybody they could have acquired to do that this winter? And I think the answer is yes. I think like Pete doesn't fit the roster, but he, like him or Bichette, I do think would have elevated them. Obviously Kyle Tucker. I like the Framber move. I don't think that they got that much better. And I don't think this offense can win a World Series. And with the Skubal clock ticking, is this going for it in Skubal's last year? Like, do you feel like they're being
That's the thing.
aggressive and they're showing urgency? Kind of. I would say kind of.
Yeah. Right. Framber is that to some degree, but I think that's the question. It's the same conversation we just had about Jose, except in some ways even more urgent. Because if Tarek Skubal, if you aren't good enough for the first few months, you might not have him for the last few months because you're probably going to trade him. So it's just a ton of pressure on everybody involved here to have a good team very quickly. And there's reasons to believe that will happen. And there's also reasons to believe that maybe they're not actually that good. C+ for me. Let's go to Kansas City. There was like a brief window after their flurry of activity. Traded for Isaac Collins and Nick Mears from Milwaukee. Traded for Matt Strom. Signed Lane Thomas. Extended Michael Garcia and Salvador Perez. And it was like, oh, wow, they're kind of checking a lot of things off here. However, we just talked about doubting the Tigers' offense. At the top, Kansas City's offense looks awesome for sure. Much better than Detroit. And much better than a lot of teams when you have Bobby Witt Jr. and Michael Garcia. But this is also one where they spent basically nothing in free agency. And I know they invested in some of their own players. They buy out Vinny Zarbiers. They extend Michael and Salvi. But this is another like opportunity in this division to push forward towards kind of favorite status. And I don't think they seized on that opportunity in a way that I kind of thought they might. And so for that, it's a B minus. Yeah, I'll say B minus.
It's a C for me.
Maybe that's still, maybe it's still a little too kind. Collins is an interesting ad. A lot of riding on Collins because, their outfield's been horrible. And if he makes it better or even average, that could go a long way.
The Royals are running a $149 million payroll. Like that's a good thing, right? Like in a market that has been lower than that, they are where they should be. They have $40 million tied up in Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha. Like that's, I know that those guys are like rotation linchpins, but that's maybe where the money is. I do think that they just did not get better on offense. There's so much riding on Isaac Collins being a really good player. There's so much riding on Carter Jensen coming up and making a difference, which I do think he can. And there's so much riding on Jack Caglione not being horrible like he was last year.
Yeah.
And so, again, I know I've said this for like 5 teams. Harrison Bader, like, raise the floor. Give yourself some depth, right? That's the issue. There's going to be a lot of Nick Lofton at bats. There's going to be a lot of Tyler Tolbert at bats. And I just think that like bringing back Yastrzemski would have made a lot of sense, who they traded for at the deadline last year. I just think I would need one more move here from this team. Austin Hayes even, right? Just to raise the floor and give them some depth. So for that reason, I am going to give them a C. Let's move to the Minnesota Twins, who also had a weird winter. They hired Derek Shelton. They signed Victor Caratini, Josh Bale, and Taylor Rogers. And then their 2 most important moves were deciding not to trade any of the vets that people thought they might trade. That is Pablo Lopez. That is Joe Ryan. I guess Byron Buxton you could throw into that group. And then getting rid of Derek Falvey, who had been the team president for a long, long time, and doing so, like last week, 2 weeks ago, right before spring was about to start. Things are weird out in Minnesota right now. Question marks about the ownership group. But in terms of evaluating this winter in and of itself, I'll go C+, I think. Deciding not to trade those guys, I'm happy about. Like, I think that's a good thing that they held on to those players, because I do think the Twins can be better than people think. But I would have liked to see them supplement that group a little bit more or traded them away, right? Like they're in a bit of no man's land here.
F. This is my F. I don't really feel bad about it. I think the fans agree. I think having an offseason like this and then firing the guy that was in charge afterwards is bizarre. Mutual parting of ways. However it happened. Maybe it was Derek Falvey's decision. But if we talk about cohesion, direction, leadership, this is just not, there's no plan here. I think the saving grace being in the AL Central is what is, I don't blame you for your take, which is looking at the roster and being like, you know what? They actually still have some decent players. That's fine. So maybe they do surprise and play well enough for, the Walker Jenkins of the world to come up and some of the young pitching that they just traded for. Maybe they're looking at it and being like, you know what? We're actually pretty good. If that's the case, go do something about it. Go add a few more veterans, and then we can really talk ourselves into the Twins being relevant this year. Instead, this has happened. And I really, really don't understand. And to your point, I think that they still might be okay. But if you end up trading all these guys anyway in July with a front office and ownership in flux, what was the point of this winter, truly? Because you could have aggressively gone in the direction like St. Louis, but they just do not have the leadership infrastructure involved to pursue something like that. And that is disappointing. So sorry to the Twins. Let's go to the White Sox. Oh, the White Sox? Are we about to give the White Sox an A? No, I'm not. Maybe you are. Maybe you are. You giving them an A?
I overreact. I'm an overreactor.
All right.
A.
Well, they sure did a lot. They sure did a lot. They get Murakami falls in their lap. Anthony Kay, Sean Newcomb, sneaky. Sir Anthony Dominguez is the closer. Austin Hayes, Eric Fetty, old friend, is back. They trade Luis Robert for Luis Angel Acuna, and they took on Jordan Hicks and got a prospect for it. I mean, again, in the context of the White Sox and how we've generally been judging them, this is a refreshing sequence of events and taking advantage of some opportunities, whether that is in free agency like Murakami out of nowhere, whether that is the Red Sox trying to dump Jordan Hicks on you, and you say, you know what, we can afford this. Let's give it a go. It's a good offseason for me. It's a B or B plus. But I don't know. I still feel like it's like, you know what? You could have flexed this even farther. You're Chicago. You could have signed an even better starter to flip at the deadline or develop into something and be like, hey, we feel good about our position player group. Let's have a starter that's going to help us lead into contention in this AL Central that mostly is not trying aggressively. So it was good, but I don't want to give them too much credit.
You're right. I'll go A-. Alex Bregman would have been so fun on this team, dude. Oh, you never obviously would not have done that. You would not have gone there, but that would have been awesome. I think the biggest critique is that the payroll is at 85 million. And I think that with the trade that they made with Luis Robert, like the Mets took on that money, right? Was there a team where the White Sox could have taken on more money and gotten more back, right? I like that they took on Jordan Hicks, but I think that there was more room to maneuver here, right? Like they should just take on some bad contracts and get some more prospects for him, right? Like,
100%.
Like who else could they go get? Like Nick Castellanos and see if you can get someone, you know.
There's probably a limit to that strategy. I think you still want some people that would want to be there, and you don't want to block playing time for your young players. But I agree. I think that is still a strategy they should continue to employ. And I think that was also what was weird, right? Is that to give Luis Roberts' entire contract away, right? In theory, that's part of the same genre of transaction. Is to, fine, you want to trade Luis Robert. If you pay for it, you're going to get better players back. Okay, so you're going to pay for Jordan Hicks. I know Jordan Hicks is then maybe can help you, and you can actually have him help your team in a way that trading away a player doesn't. But I don't know, a little bit of conflicting moves in that sense. But yeah, I mean, a team in Chicago should not have a payroll of $85 million, which I believe is, but I think, yes, that is 28th.
It's like
third. Ahead of only Cleveland and Miami.
Yeah. I think for the fan base, though, like this is a good offseason for a bad team. I think that if you, that's why we have to grade it as it is. Like, these are the types of moves more bad teams should be making over the winter. And I think that the White Sox are doing something interesting. Let's move to the National League, where we begin with the NL Central champion Brewers. What did they do besides piss me off? They kept Brandon Woodruff with the qualifying offer. They acquired come on, Jake. They acquired Angel Serpa for Isaac Collins, Nick Mears. Sent away Freddie Peralta, Tobias Myers for Jet Williams and Brandon Sproat. Sent away Caleb Durbin and anybody else in their team who knows how to play third base for Kyle Harrison, Shane Drohan, and David Hamilton. Did they sign a free agent besides?
Nope. They signed Akil Baddoo to a split deal, which does not guarantee him a spot on the Major League roster. But if you do not count Brandon Woodruff technically signing a free agent deal as a qualifying offer, they signed nobody. 0 players. They are the only team that can say that, that has the privilege of being able to say that they signed 0 free agents. Listen, I just wrote the NL Central grades. I gave the Brewers a C+ because they are the Brewers and they know what they're doing. They also could still have another move in them. Isaac Paredes would make so much sense. I know Matt Arnold went on the Zoom call yesterday and said, we love our internal options. We love everyone. Oh, look at our prospects and all these guys that can play third base. That's fine. The team is worse than it was when the season ended. I don't think you can dispute that. Are these bad trades when you throw them in your preferred trade value calculator? Maybe not, but as someone who is relatively low on Jet Williams, relatively low on Brandon Sproat, and just thinks that a team in this position that's desperately trying to break through to the World Series should be showing a little bit more oomph, even if you are trading Freddie Peralta, do something else with the money. Like, fine, if you have to trade the guy reaching free agency because you're not going to be able to keep him, okay, I accept. But please show some level of more urgency to make us feel like this is finally going to be the team that breaks through. The future is bright in Milwaukee. Their farm system is awesome. We're working on our 26 and under power rankings coming up before the season. They are going to rank quite well. I think they're still going to be very good. But for an offseason, the ins, the outs, it's a C, I guess a plus. It could be worse than that. What do you think?
This is one of the best organizations in baseball. They are so good at what they do. I absolutely hate this offseason. I'm going to give them a D because I can't look at this lineup and think that it can win a World Series. You know, I just, how can one do that? Do I think they can get into the playoffs? Yeah. But I think getting a bite at the apple is different than eating the whole thing. And the Brewers have kind of showed us that over the years. I want a team in this position to go for it, to show some urgency. I understand that being sustainable is important when you're in a smaller market. I understand that in some circumstances, they have spent some money. The Milwaukee Brewers are not in the Marlins, Guardians, White Sox payroll range. They're in at 126, right? They got Woodruff for 22. They got Yelich for 26. Like, I get that. It's just, it's tough to justify. I know that these people are smart. I get it. But like, also trading Caleb Durbin, who embodied kind of the essence of what you were doing last year, is kind of perplexing to me. Just bums me out. Like the Brewers offseason,
tell me this, right?
No offseason bums me out more than the Brewers offseason.
Again, like Peralta, fine. We're used to those things. Trading Caleb Durbin and Isaac Collins is a totally different calculus.
That's new.
These are two players that were just getting Rookie of the Year votes, who were unusual profiles, but big parts of you scoring runs. So if you Brewers fan want to say, why are you worried about them? Why are you worrying about them? Right. And not making any money. Why are you worrying about them scoring any runs? They just scored the third most runs in baseball last year. Yeah. Caleb Durbin and Isaac Collins were a big part of that. Maybe they don't believe they will be again. Clearly, if they're willing to trade them for more pitching, which I felt like they were going to be just fine. Maybe they recognize that trading Freddie Peralta is a tough, like there's a lot to replace there. And I'm sure they also aren't feeling super awesome about Brandon Woodruff from a durability standpoint. So I understand trying to give you as much options on the mound as possible. But that's the thing about the offense. Yeah, it was they were scoring a lot of runs in the regular season, but Durbin and Collins were a big part of that. And I just, where's the upside besides with Churrio's the one? Other than that, who's having a way better season? I guess you could say Contreras had kind of a down season. Is Terang really going to get that much better? I guess you say Ortiz isn't awful. And I guess you really think Jet Williams is going to play a huge role this season, which maybe is true, but is he going to be that much better than Caleb Durbin and Isaac Collins? Certainly not immediately. And again, that's the thing. It's just the urgency. It's not that we don't understand it. We know how they operate. We know they're doing their best with what they're working with, but I don't know. I just, maybe we're just old and grumpy now. So
I understand why you are. I don't have to like you, and I like the Brewers as an operation. I think what the front office does is very impressive and commendable, but just, it goes above that. This type of team should not be operating in this type of manner. When you are this close, when you won the most games in baseball, you should be doubling down. You should be supplementing a team, adding to it, not subtracting from it. And that includes Peralta, man. Like, I understand you feel like you got to get value back for him, but there's also an argument that you keep him and you like say, hey, maybe this is the year we, push through. I don't know. They bum me out. Let's go to the Chicago Cubs, who, at least from an offseason perspective, did not bum me out. Alex Bregman, 5/175. Phil Maton, Colin Ray, Hunter Harvey, Caleb Thielbar, Hobie Milner, Jacob Webb. So it's basically like Bregman and a bullpen was their winter. They traded for Edward Cabrera and retained Shota Imanaga in the rotation. Transactionally, this is pretty good. I like this offseason, Jordan. I like it. I think I'm going to give it an A-.
A- for me. That is what I gave them as well. I'm still a little bit concerned about... I see the upside with Cabrera, but I think Cabrera as your big pitching move and just adding a bunch of veteran relievers who are fine but don't exactly offer like humongous upside, with the concerns on the mound, and this includes keeping Imanaga, I'm not sure they got better enough on the mound that makes me feel amazing, at least from just a risk tolerance standpoint. So that's why I keep it at an A- and not an A. But, Bregman, good ball player, going to help them a lot, make them a better team, and also important. If you're that willing to just sell Kyle Tucker to screw off and have no interest in bringing him back, then you gotta bring in someone to you really kind of anchor the middle of that lineup, and they did that. So good for the Cubs. A-, pretty simple.
Cincinnati Reds. What did they do this winter? They spent a little bit of money signing Eugenio Suarez, 1 year, $15 million to play first base. They crossed their fingers while Ellie De La Cruz rode his dirt bike in the Dominican Republic. And then they brought back Emilio Pagan, Caleb Ferguson, Pierce Johnson, Brock Burke. So it's basically like reinforcing the bullpen, signing Gino Suarez. That's really it, right? Like this is a B minus, a C plus, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a B for me. Just pouncing on Gino when his market just completely cratered is a pretty big deal for them, for a team that desperately needed power. 21st in homers last year, and you play in Great American Ball.
Yeah.
That is very embarrassing. At the very least, Gino should help in that department. I think he's mostly going to DH. They got to keep Sal Stewart in the lineup. Got to have, Spencer Steer in there. I still don't understand why Brian Hayes is on this team, but at least he makes the defense better. And we'll see if JJ Bleday can bounce back. Dane Myers will also improve the outfield defense. B for me. Let's go to St. Louis. Like the Nationals, it's time to move on from this era of Cardinals baseball. And so Chaim Bloom is making it happen.
Day.
I think the Cardinals fans are in a little bit of a different spot because while they have done a whole lot of losing the last few years, they are not necessarily the team that is going to be as patient with a process like this. That said, that is why Bloom attacked this with urgency and said, we are doing all of this at once. We are not just going to, maybe we'll trade Sonny, but then we'll keep him and we'll maybe. No. Donovan, gone. Gray, gone. Contreras, gone. Arenado, gone. The returns for these guys obviously ranged wildly depending on the money involved and the contracts and whatever. That said, I think they did pretty well in these trades. They added a ton of talent, a lot of which at the upper levels, a lot of pitching, which they desperately needed. It is a B for me. They only signed Dustin May and Ryan Stanek as far as major league acquisitions go. Their payroll is going to be as low as it has been in years, which I can understand is frustrating, and we don't want to celebrate that necessarily. So we know what's going on here. The process is ongoing. I think there's reasons to believe that they could be relevant in 2027. This year, probably going to be pretty bad. But it's a B for what they were trying to do.
I'll B plus. I do think that their payroll fall off is like as defensible as one can be given their TV situation, is like a lot of money out of their pocket. And because the old leadership group made bad moves, the team has been worse. Fewer people are going to the ballpark. No team is more dependent on getting people in the seats to make money than the Cardinals, who were effectively outdrawing their market to such an outrageous degree for such a long time. So that being said, I would have liked to see them take on more money in the deals where they traded these guys away to get even better prospects back. They still did a pretty good job of that. But what I do love about their winter is that, right, they did not half-ass this. They traded away 5 dudes, right? 4 dudes. Wilson Contreras, Sonny Gray, Nolan Arenado, Brendan Donovan. Like everyday players from last year's team. They're like, we're getting worse right now. That is what is happening. Sorry. That's it. And I think that Chaim Bloom is going to get this ship turned around pretty swiftly. All right, let's finish up with the Pittsburgh Pirates.
I would just say, the one thing I would just add to that is, you just mentioned it briefly. We have not talked about the TV situation at all. And we probably should dive into it a little bit more at some point before the season. That is something that is impacting more teams than just the Cardinals. So I just want to make sure when we're referencing payroll and excuses and whatnot. I mean, no, it's understandable because they traded away 4 or 3 incredibly expensive veterans. And that's just what's going to happen. That was the whole point of these things. So I'm not saying they need to go splash around in free agency, but still, you can understand from an optics standpoint that is not awesome. In fact, that's actually a good transition.
All right, let's finish up with the Pittsburgh Pirates. What they do this winter. They spent so much money for the Pirates. They signed Ryan O'Hearn, 2 years, $29 million. Gregory Soto for 1 year, $7.5 million. Marcelo Ozuna this week to be the DH for 12. Hired Don Kelly full-time to be their skipper, removing the interim tag. And then they traded for Mason Montgomery, Brandon Lau, and Jake Mangum in that 3-way deal. And then I guess Josinson Garcia from the Red Sox. For me, this is a C. They got better. The offense got better. That is for sure. The Pirates being second place for every free agent of showing interest in being in the mix and ultimately losing out makes them look like such fools and losers. This offense didn't just need a little help. It needed a facelift. It needed a massive upgrade. And I don't think it got, like, is there an all-star offensive player in this group? Like a no doubt all-star? Probably not, right?
Well, all three of the players they added have all-stars on their resume, so you could say that. All three of them have been well above average hitters. Listen, I'm just saying, okay? I don't think you should
Is anyone getting MVP votes? Are any Pirates hitters getting MVP votes this year?
No, I don't think so. But whatever. I know we've made that point 100 times. If we're grading the offseason for how much better they got, I think they got a lot better.
They got better.
They added a lot of good hitters. It's a B- for me because that's fine. And again, we've reviewed with a lot of these teams, is that how we're judging them? Did they get good enough, or how much better did they get? Those are two slightly different conversations. My problem and why it's still B- and not like, oh my God, they crushed it, even though they spent $50 million in free agency, which is just like, oh my God, could you possibly fathom that? Pirates now have a higher payroll than the Cardinals. Like, yeah, they deserve some credit for those things. These pieces do not really fit together in a way that makes a lot of sense. That might be the result of just they missed on all these other pursuits, and this is the best that they could do is Marcell Ozuna. Let's talk about Ozuna, because this is the move that makes the other moves make less sense. This is the move that makes Ryan O'Hearn a worse fit if he's going to have to play the outfield almost every day, because Ozuna is a DH. He has played 2 games in the outfield in the last 3 years. If you are
There's also no room
entirely in Ozuna
for Josinson Garcia to play every day in the outfield now, if you're going to have
probably not
Brian Reynolds,
probably not,
and O'Neal Cruz and
O'Neal Cruz still learning center field, and Reynolds is a terrible defensive outfield. Brandon Lau was the worst defensive second baseman in baseball last year. Horwitz is not a good defender. You don't really have a shortstop right now. I know Connor Griffin will be here soon, and that's good, I hope. And you didn't address third base. Jared Triolo, Nick Gonzalez are rotating through there. Those are not guys that are, should be starting every day, really, at either of those positions. And with Ozuna, you've locked yourself into this situation where O'Hearn is just playing a lot of outfield. And this is how you are saying goodbye to Andrew McCutchen, which is fine if you do not feel obligated to give Andrew McCutchen another 1-year, $5 million contract for the 4th year in a row. That is okay. However, doing it for Ozuna is really a choice. And I get it from the standpoint of, we're the Pittsburgh Pirates, and we don't normally have access to someone who is a top 10 hitter in baseball not that long ago. That was Marcell Ozuna in 23 and 24 and the start of this past season before his hip injury. So I understand you're chasing the kind of upside that Andrew McCutchen does not offer. But from a vibe standpoint, from a PR standpoint, from a fans engagement service standpoint, that's a tough way to do it, which all brings it to the obvious answer for when we talk about all these things. Not that other stuff should not be important in terms of how fans, treat their team and engage with their team, and how they want their team to be represented with players who have backgrounds like Marcell Ozuna, which is, you better be right. You better win. You better have an offense that supports a pitching staff that has Paul Skeens and has Bubba Chandler and has Mitch Keller still and Ashcraft. Like, this team could be good. It could, because they have done enough that I can talk myself into being good. But this Ozuna move, because of the restrictions it's going to put on the team, does not make me feel awesome about it. And Christopher Negron, the new bench coach, he's going to, we talked about infield positioning with the Giants. Defensive positioning is going to be really important for this team as well.
Defense could suck, dude. Like, this
really
defense could be
really bad.
really suck. To me, yes, like from a positional standpoint, Ozuna doesn't make any sense. But to the upshot is that Andrew McCutchen, the most important player this century for your franchise feels slighted. And you failed at the communication side of that. Whether that was to bring in Ozuna, whether McCutchen deserves the contract or not, if McCutchen is on Twitter tweeting about how he feels slighted, like you aired somewhere, probably, right? And so that is why I am just so low on this offseason. That is part of why I'm low on this offseason as a whole. It's a bummer. And like, look, yeah, your rotation's good and they strike out a lot of people. Are they going to strike out enough people to make up for this defense being awful? I don't think so. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Those are all the baseball teams. Those are all the off seasons. This is a long one. It's a hefty pod. Don't hurt your back trying to lift it. Thank you to Ingrid Rosas and Andrew Hartz for producing. Thank you to the teams for doing things so that we could talk about it. Thank you to Bad Bunny for being a bad bunny and entertaining the masses.
Thank you to Bad Bunny. Email us, baseballbarbacast@gmail.com. I will talk to you on Friday from Arizona. Bye-bye.